Salute to you all. The brave never fall. I'm Coach mjdtiger, life coach, mentor. Helping others is my passion. Helping others get through the valleys, over the mountains, over the volcanoes is what I was born to do, and I will continue doing that. Welcome to Visions. Time is not trash, never wasted. It's something as an individual, for myself, and as I see others, are we wasting our time? How are we spending it? How do we value it? How do we devalue it? These are things we either think about too much or far too little. I purposely try to think about it as much as possible, and I challenge you to do the same because it puts things in perspective real quick. How are we spending our time? Are we truly wasting it on people, places, and things? Or the people we interact with, the places we interact with, the things we interact with, do they serve us? And if they don't, then why are we doing it? One of my favorite books that I highly recommend is Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. This book is really important to me. It's really helped me through a lot of different areas of my life. What I like about this book is Tim Ferriss, his podcast. If you haven't checked out his podcast, I highly recommend that as well because it's a companion piece. This book is literally the highlights of all the guests he's had, hundreds of guests, and they talk about anything and everything from wealth to health to wisdom to knowledge, all their insights, everything that got through the hump. And these are very influential people that he's talking about, people who are very successful, people we can all learn something from, people who are very humble, people who have things they want to share, and they're not only sharing it, but they're just being very open, as if you're just a friend having coffee or tea with them. And I highly recommend Tools of Titans. If you have the opportunity to read this book, I can't recommend it enough. It's one of my favorite books of all time. How are you feeling? How are you feeling mentally, in your mind? How are you feeling physically, throughout your body? How are you feeling within your heart, emotionally? How are you feeling in your soul, spiritually? These are things I ask myself every morning, throughout the day, and every night before I close my eyes for peaceful sleep. I encourage you to do the same. And there's no better time than to be in the moment. You are here now. Take a moment of silence to ask yourself, how are you feeling mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually? How are you feeling? Remember, you are the common denominator in your life. Everything will always come back to you, so make sure whatever you're doing, you're owning up to it, you're holding yourself accountable, and you're answering the call of your purpose each and every day. You are Visions, Episode 1, Blueprints of Life. I came up with the idea of blueprints going all the way back to the beginning of the Brave Never Fall podcast, where I started talking about how do we create, and in a lot of cases have to recreate who we are, what our visions are for our purpose, our passions, and just in general, what are our principles, our morals, and our boundaries? What aspects of our self-love can we make sure are hardened and looked after and preserved, and not just something that we take for granted and is getting chipped away at by other people, places, and things when we're not even aware of it? Our self-respect, self-discipline. What are we really doing each day that adds up to, if we could just put it all on paper, would look like a blueprint? And I thought it'd be a good way to start off essentially the new phase 3 with this podcast. It officially kicks off with this one. This is episode 1 of phase 3 of all of the 100 podcasts that we're going to do in phase 3. This is the number 1. I wanted to start off with something that was very central and a core element to the Brave Never Fall, which is what I call the blueprints of life. And what I always envision it being is something extremely simple, just like you're drafting something with a pencil. You can use an eraser. It doesn't have to be an ink. It's not a tattoo. It's something that you can take a look at, see where you went wrong. What's the wrong angle here? What's the wrong length here? Is it too grand? Is it not enough? Blueprints of life for me are these things. And they can be taken in microcosm or it can be taken on a grand scale. You can design a little small shack in your backyard, or you can design a full-blown stadium, an athletic stadium. Each one is going to come with its challenges. And the common theme between the both of them is that they both serve a purpose. You don't build a shack for no reason. You don't build a stadium for no reason. Everything is built for a reason, including us. I'm built for a reason. You're built for a reason. And it's our purpose to figure out what the hell were we built for? Which is why I call it blueprints of life. Because it's not just about having a life. It's about what are you doing with it? Just like the shack, just like the stadium. What's the point of building them if you're not going to do anything with it? If you remember back into the Olympics, the bird cage in China, they built it for the Olympics, and then when the Olympics were over, everyone was standing around saying, what the hell do we use this beautiful stadium for? So you have to find new reasons to use it. That's where recreating our blueprints comes into play. There's all types of buildings and structures that are repurposed. The structure is the same. What's going on inside of it or outside of it is completely different. What's happening around it is completely different. In some cases, it's moved hundreds of miles away and relocated. We're no different. We are no different. We are people with beating hearts that need and require purpose. But in order to do that, we need structure. How do we get structure? We need a blueprint. We need something where we can say, I need to see what's underneath. I can't just imagine it. You can't just walk up to a group of people and say, let's build something. It's not going to look very good. And the purpose of it is going to be wasted. What's the point of wasting the time of building something that has no purpose to it at all? It may have purpose to you. It may have purpose to the other person. But if it's not being utilized that way, where we saying something has purpose when it actually doesn't? where we saying something serves us when it actually doesn't. So let's go back to the drawing board, literally, of yourself. I like to think of myself literally as just a blueprint. And each day I can change whatever I want. But it will always, always go back to what is the purpose of what I'm trying to create for that day. If I'm trying to create success, I'm not going to build something that I know is going to help me fail. I'm going to build something that is going to secure my victory. And I don't want anything else. I don't care for anything else. It doesn't serve me. I don't care if you're a person, place, or thing. You have to step into reality. In phase 1, I wanted to bring these things up because I thought you have to ease your way into a new vision for yourself. In phase 2, I wanted to cultivate that vision and say, yes, we can do it. We have to believe in it. We have to trust. Phase 2 was all about trusting yourself. But now it's time to get down to what is reality and what do we have to work with. At some point, each and every one of us has to know deep within ourselves, this is what I have to work with. And damn it, I have to do something with it, even if the things I have to work with are not what I really want. But that's where being humble, being grateful, and being appreciative and being satisfied for who we are in this moment right now. And not giving a damn what we did 3 hours ago or what we're going to do 3 hours from now. It's what are we doing now and what can we create with what we have. And we'll talk about this further in a later podcast coming up in this series and the Vision series. We'll talk about what we have now and how important that is. But for the sake of just talking about the blueprints, we're talking about just core elemental things. What are your values? What are your boundaries? What are your principles? What actions can you take to really, truly answer the call of purpose for your life and not BS yourself into thinking you're doing more than what you actually are? Honest assessment of said blueprints for your life. That's what we're looking at. And if we look down a lot of blueprints, what the hell was that? If we look down at our blueprints, we can clearly see what areas need to be touched up. We can clearly see what areas are going to fail. We don't even have to guess. The numbers add up. I took drafting class when I was in high school because I thought drafting was another form of art, of drawing. And what I found out was that drafting is another form of math. It was another form of something that I thought I was horrible at, which was math, geometry. Point A to point B. And you would have to read off these numbers, and through the numbers in the book, you would create this draft. But there was no picture. You had to just go off of the numbers and the coordinates and the angles. And I got pretty good at it, and I ended up loving it. And that has facilitated me into envisioning what a blueprint for a human being would be like, because it really is just about numbers. What are your numbers? Are your numbers positive, negative, both? Who knows? We all have our own set of numbers, but nothing is finite when it comes to those numbers. Numbers are infinite. Numbers are infinite. And if numbers are infinite, that means so are we. We can create whatever we want, whatever angles, obtuse or not. We can create these things. Now let's get back into reality here. What that really means is, if you want to create a good day, what blueprint will you create before your day starts to facilitate that victory? And yes, not every blueprint ends up being right. The goal is to get as close as possible to right, to correct. It's not about perfection. It's about action. If we wait for perfection, we will essentially be hugging inaction. You're essentially embracing inaction if you're waiting for perfection, because you won't get it. So if you're drafting perfection, how do you know it's perfect before you start building? You won't know until you start building. And there's too many things we can't control that's going to make sure that whatever perfection we're seeking is going to be challenged anyway. So let's just step back. If we're going to be challenged anyway, let's do something that's going to make sure that we secure that victory for today. Who says Rome has to be built in a day? Doesn't. Who says we have to be perfect as a human being every single day of our life? Who says that? And if that person is saying that, is that person perfect? Odds are that person is not perfect. That person is living a life just like you are. They're getting by every single day, and they may or may not be holding themselves accountable for what they're doing. It's real easy to look at someone else and say, they're doing something very similar to me, so therefore their blueprint must be very similar to mine. If we was to stack them up and go through them, maybe I wouldn't be able to tell my blueprints from theirs. Wrong. Yours would stick out. No two blueprints are the same. No two fingerprints are the same. You are you. That person is that person. No matter how close an identity you think you are with that person, that void between you two is bigger than you think. Which means you ultimately have to go back to yourself and say, it's about me. I can't compare my blueprint to someone else. I can't draft my blueprint to mimic someone else's. That's why mimicking someone else's actions and words and behaviors, that's more of a child trait. Once you get to be at a certain point, you should know who you are enough where you can look at something and say, that's a good attribute. I'll incorporate it, but I'm not going to mimic it. I'm not going to completely just say, that's mine, just as this person's. You have to make things your own. What makes stadiums beautiful is that no two stadiums are alike. Look at all of the unique professional sports stadiums. They're all stadiums. No two are even remotely alike. If they were, what would be the fun in that? What would be the fun of repping your sports team in your city, knowing that the visiting team city's stadium is exactly like yours? What is special about that? If all the teams wore the same colors, if all the teams had the same mascots. No, we do it because we're proud of the individual elements of said cities that we're repping, that we're cheering for. That's what makes it individually fun for a sports fan. Same with our houses. There are places where you have to have houses that look exactly like someone else's. Townhomes are a perfect example. But we have the options of going and building a house from scratch that looks nothing like anyone else's. And a lot of people strive for that. But a lot of people have no problem saying, listen, I'm perfectly fine with it being very similar to everyone else's. But guess what? They're not similar. They're only similar on the exterior. The interior, we add our own touch. Life is the same way. We can mimic someone down to the core on the exterior. On the interior, you can't mimic it. Deep down inside, you know there's something in there that's completely different. Looks the same on the outside, interior, completely unique. Now we have to ask ourselves a question. If it's completely unique, are we owning what's in there? Do we truly like what's in there? Or do we want to change things around? That goes back to what? Floor plan, game plan, blueprint. All goes back to the beginning, the genesis of the idea of what we want. the genesis of the idea of what we want, gives us the opportunity to create, truly create something that will work. The Brave Never Fall is not about creating things that might work. It's about creating things that will work. Which means we are taking steps. We are not jumping. We're not skipping. We're not doing cartwheels. We are taking measured, calculated steps that make sense in reality. And if it doesn't make sense in reality, that means it can't be drafted in the first place, because we cannot draft fantasy. If you want to take your blueprint and make a unicorn out of it, that is your prerogative. But you're never going to be able to create that unicorn, because unicorns don't exist, at least not in my reality. If you find one, I would love to see a unicorn with my own eyeballs. I think they're actually amazing creatures. I love the Pegasus as well. If you can find me a flying horse, and I'm not joking, I love the Pegasus. I grew up watching Clash of the Titans. This is rando. I grew up watching Clash of the Titans. It actually made me get into my fantasy a lot more, which I think having a good imagination does serve a good blueprint, because you're able to think beyond the box of yourself. Now, we can go to the extremes, but there's nothing wrong with a little bit of exaggeration. What if? What's wrong with asking that? The problem is we do have to reel it in and say, okay, what if this? What if I could get here? But what are some realistic steps that I can take that are going to make sure that I get there in a timely manner? And it's not something that's so bizarre and so out there that I'm never going to get it, because I can't even envision it, let alone draft it. And not only that, the people around me can't see it either. So now I'm just lost, because I can't even get help with this. It's not what we want. We need to be able to, if you can't speak of who you are and what your draft is and what your purpose is, that's a bit of a problem. It's not hard for me to say my purpose in life is helping people. But if someone says, what is your purpose in life? And you have to pause and think, your blueprint is not working. It's just a reality. And it's just an ownership and accountability thing. I went through it. Someone would ask me 20 years ago, what do you want to be in life? I would name off 5 different things, 6 different things, 10 different things. Then it would say, can you narrow that down? Can you pick 3? I would pick the 3. And then I would think, why did I pick them? That's never going to happen. Because it was too many things that were out of my control, and I wasn't taking the proper steps to get towards those goals anyway. They were fantasies. Looking back on it now, I can clearly see that. So now, in the present, when we think about things that are unattainable in our lives, we can choose to look at it that way. We can also choose to look at what is attainable. What can we get? We don't focus enough on that. We keep focusing on the things that we'll never get, and then we get down on ourselves. We say, we didn't do enough, time is running out. All the while, the things that we can do, that can be done in a second, right now, we're saying, well, that's not good enough, because that doesn't get me closer to those things over there. Those things over there is what I really want. But those things over there can't even be drafted. They're fantasy. You don't understand how others got to it, so your path is lost to get to it. You can try to generate it, you can try to create it, but if you don't know the process, that's like baking a cake and you never baked before. Good luck with that. You need confidence and trust in yourself to do anything that is measured and is something that you know will serve you 100% if you start that process. There's nothing worse than starting a process and you're unsure of how it's going to turn out. There's nothing worse than starting a relationship and you're unsure on how it's going to turn out. These are things that are just inherently a fear for most human beings. And it's the same for us when it comes to things like what our blueprint in life, our purpose looks like. It can be frightening at times because we don't really know if we can get there. But I have found if you want to get to something that is truly something that brings you joy, something that brings you happiness and peace, you will get there. It's almost inevitable if you focus on it. And if we can put a game plan together, which is what the Brave Never Fall is all about. It's about putting a game plan together so you can focus on freeing yourself from the constraints of your own mind, your own limitations in your heart, your physical limitations, your spiritual limitations. It's all about breaking beyond that and ascending and doing more with less. Because you don't need more to build. You just need focus. You don't need 1,000 things. We don't have to build a stadium. The shack is good enough for now. Just build something. It's like me and my son when we play Minecraft. He'll just trying to find the perfect spot. And I eventually say, son, just put a block down. Just start building. There's no perfect spot. If it looks like crap, guess what? It's Minecraft. Look at my buildings, son. They don't look very good. I know, Dad. Well, then I can just knock them down and rebuild around the best parts that I did build. The best parts, I can build around those. I can knock the rest of them down. But the important thing is just to get started. That's the lesson. That's the goal. How do you get somewhere if you don't take the initial step? How do you see what your life's like if you're closing your eyes? Open them. Look around you. What do you have to work with? And we'll talk about that also in this series. It's just the tools. It's to build something, we need tools. We need assets. We need time. We need patience and understanding. We need to learn. We need wisdom. We need to know that what we're doing is not a waste of time. It goes back to that quote. Time is not trash. Never waste it. Your time is valuable. In any respect in life, your time is valuable. Who you spend your time with, even your family members, your friends, it's damn valuable. I don't just give my time anymore. It's a boundary for me. I do not give my time to any person, place, or thing that is wasting my time. And that is something that is in the blueprint. I do not give my time to people, places, and things that have no value for me. And the more I know myself, the more I can look down that blueprint and say, I know when I'm getting my time wasted because it's right here in front of me. I'm sticking hard and true to it, and I will only be around people that are not wasting my time. I will only do things that are not wasting my time. I will only go to places that bring me happiness, peace, and joy. Or if it's hard, it's challenging me in a healthy way. Which is why I love to run. Which is why I have a very physical job. Which is why I choose to make this podcast. Which is why I choose to write the book for The Brave Never Fall. It's all because it's not wasting my time. It's helping me grow as a person. It's tethered to my purpose. Now, if I can figure that out for myself, which is why I choose to be a coach, which is why I choose to help people, is because I have figured that out and it works. There are things that have happened to me in the last few months because of my action, because of me staying steady with my boundaries, staying steady with who I am and what I want out of life, the peace and the joy and the happiness and no drama and no BS and just being straightforward and only allowing people in my life that are excited to see me and I'm excited to see them and only doing things that I'm excited to do, going to work because I love my job, helping people. These are things that are on that blueprint. How do I know this? Because I recreated it when I needed to recreate it. I revised it, and it only is made. The revisions are made for you to adjust and augment the best parts. Again, it's like the Minecraft blocks. You built something, you're not satisfied with it, it doesn't work. You tear down the parts that don't work and you build around it. You build around the parts that do work. The blueprint is there. Who you are right now, if you went and looked in the mirror and you looked yourself right in the eyes, that's your blueprint. It's beyond those eyes. And your job is to figure out, how do you build upon the things that are the best parts of yourself and you jettison the parts that just aren't working? And it's not exterior. Again, these are not townhomes. You don't do this by going outside and looking at everybody else's stuff and saying, well, how can I make it more like theirs or less like that? No. Open up your door, walk in, close the door, and you stay there until you figure out what's going on in here. Before you go out there and start judging other people and start trying to be more like them or less like them or saying they're the reasons why your interior doesn't look the way you want it to be. We can't go outside and say, it's this person's fault. It's this person's fault. I want this person in my life. I like this thing. All of that's fine, but you better be damn happy while you're doing that. Because the moment you wake up and you're miserable, all of that stuff means nothing. You're the reason why you're miserable. That's why the blueprint is so important. And again, I'm speaking from experience. I'm not speaking as a person who is unaware of these things. I have woken up plenty of times and blamed everybody else for my misery. And I've come to learn over the last few years that that's not the way to go. And I choose not to be around people that do that, because it doesn't serve me or them to be around someone who is going to blame other people for their unhappiness. That is our purpose in life. We have to look at our own blueprint and look down and say, who signed off on this blueprint? If you drafted a blueprint, if we go to any engineer and they make their drafts, they're not signing someone else's name on there. They're signing their name on it. And that's something we're going to talk about. There's a whole podcast devoted to your signature. You putting your name to things. We talked about this in phase 1, but I'm going to bring it up again in this phase because it's very important. Your name is tied to things in life. One of them being your life. You are tied to your life. Would you attach your name to something that was horrible willingly? So why do we do it in our own lives every single day? Why attach your name to something within you that is horrible, that is full of darkness, that is no joy, and pretend that it is? We can't pretend that our blueprint looks better than it actually is. Because somebody's going to come along and say, what is going on in that corner over there? Nothing. It's fine. No, it's not. It's smudged. It doesn't make any sense. The math doesn't add up. It has no purpose with the other side. If you was to build that, it would crumble. These are the blueprints of life. This is what it's all about. This is your fate, your destiny. It's tied to these types of things. It's hard to hear, but this is what blueprints of life is going to be all about. Reality. It's not about blowing smoke up rear ends. It's about taking ownership. It's about looking down at the blueprint and saying, how do I make this better for myself? We rise and maintain balance is the name of phase 3. But you can't have a we without an I. So if you want to be a part of the collective, again, the Brave Never Fall is about freedom and connection. I put freedom first because you're the individual. We are free to be connected with others. And if we can't connect with others, it's not their fault. We're not connecting. It's our fault. Because we haven't risen and maintained balance. You, me, we are unbalanced and we're not standing. We're on our knees, begging and hoping and pleading that things outside of our control can help us. That doesn't serve us. Not at all, not one bit. You get off your damn knees, stand up, put your shoulders back, put your head up high, and start walking forward. And if you have to walk and look at your blueprint at the same time, that's what you do. You figure it out along the way. It's only difficult if you look at it that way. If you focus on the moment, it's not difficult. If you focus on the whole damn journey, of course it's going to be difficult. If you're constantly looking at all the mistakes you made an hour before, of course it's going to be difficult. Discipline. Drafting your blueprint is about discipline. It's about commitment. It's about true reality, ownership, and accountability of who you are and what you can do. Not what you want to do, not what you think you can do, not what you're trying to do. It's what you can do. Pushing yourself to say, I'm going to go a little bit further today. I know I can do it. It's going to be hard. I haven't done it before, but I'm going to get there. And if no one has told you this today, I love you. You deserve to hear that. Salute to you all. The brave never fall. We rise and maintain balance.